Here is what my father's death smelled like. It smelled like blood, which smelled like metal and panic. We have evolved to find the scent of the inside of our bodies upsetting. We recognize the smell of shit and snot and piss and all of the other fluids do not belong to the natural healthy order of a civilized society, and so they repulse us. But a smell like blood goes further than that. This much quantity, where it fills the air, the smell floods us with adrenaline. And so it is not much a smell as an experience of the flesh. My father's death smelled like blood. And so it smelled like tingling hands and a dry mouth, and a scalp 2 sizes too small and skin that twitched. My father's death smelled like smoke, which combined with the blood almost smelled like the preparation of a meal. But the disconnect between what I knew to be true and what the smell reminded me of caused an emotional sickness, and I staggered away from his body to throw up. Then his death smelled like my vomit, which smells like acid and disease. My father's death smelled much like his life. It smelled like his clothes, it smelled like his skin, which smelled exactly like his skin when he was alive. It smelled like his hair and his hands and the sharp peppery note of the grass he was laying on. The night breeze in front of the sea still smelled like ice and salt and deep organic undercurrent. That was the combined smell of all things living in it. In other words, my father's death smelled most of all like any other night, like any other time that was not the end of everything I had ever known. There was nothing in the smell to indicate how deep and terrifying was the reality, and that was the worst part of all. The smell. That is what my father's death smelled like. Edmund arrived soon after. He put one arm around me and around my father's body. "What have we done?" he said. "What have we done?" He cried. I've never seen him cry, and the surprise of this startled me out of my stupor. For a moment, I reached up and wiped one cheek. "I was foolish to think we could have set a trap for the Order of the Labyrinth," whispered Edmund through his weeping. Ban said, "Set a trap for us." Drew me and my men away from the estate and then attacked, following the same principle we had thought to follow. Strike first, strike so viciously and so completely that no response is possible. He shook his head and waved vaguely at the devastation behind us. "I am a fool and a failure," he said. His defeat roused action in me. "We must go," I said. "We must go before they return. There is nothing for us here." He nodded, seeming only an automatic gesture in response to my words. I helped him up, and together we went to fetch a wagon that hadn't been destroyed in the fire, and some horses that Edmund had tethered back at the planned ambush site. The smell of the still burning building was a physical pain for me. It would take me many decades longer than any human life to come up to appreciate the inhuman beauty of the smell of burning. Until then, it only brought back again and again to the place and that night. Edmund refused help from his men and carried my father into the wagon himself. As I was about to follow my father's body into the wagon, I saw someone approaching from the woods. I turned, ready to fight, ready to defend, ready to die, but it was Albert. He looked about him with numb shock at the ruined estate, at me with my father's blood in my clothes. "What's happened? Who's done this?" he croaked out. He saw the wagon. "You're not leaving. Where will you go?" Where would I go? I would go with Edmund. I would travel the world and learn the ways of criminals. and live the life of a criminal, and use all the skills my father had taught me with only one goal in mind: to utterly destroy the Order of the Labyrinth for what they had done to me. "Go home, Albert," I said. Tears streamed down my face, and he began to weep too. So I touched his cheek, only to comfort him, only to wipe away his tears, and then I found myself drawing his face toward mine, and we kissed then. A long kiss, one that would have to stand in for years of time together we would never get to have. His lips tasted salty, but his face smelled clean, like linen fresh from water. Finally, the kiss broke off, and I turned before I could begin to waver. "Goodbye," I said, with my back turned, and I got into the wagon. "Goodbye," I heard Albert respond softly. I did not know if I would ever hear his voice again. I thought that probably I would not. All right, and that's it until tomorrow.